Chris, welcome. Did Will, the Story of People podcast. Thanks for making the time, pal.
Thank you. I'm excited to join you today and talk all things sports, entertainment, whatever you got.
It's very interesting. The theme of Did Will, like kind of, I want to cover, so many things as we discussed kind of prior to the show. I want to cover, I'm trying to get like the head of the New York Fire Department. I'm trying to get like guys, like anyone from all walks.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm getting a lot of journalists and a lot of sports people, which has been amazing. And it's taking me in all these different directions. So keeping with the theme, because we had Darren Millard on, and that was a great episode chatting Stanley Cup and going from the Brandon, Manitoba to the Vegas Golden Knights and that journey. But you've got a really great journey as well. We've got some mutual friends. You got a very slick logo I've put up on the screen there. It's Chris Gear. He's part of the Blackfin Sports Group, founder of the Blackfin Sports Group, and he's joined me today. So I appreciate you coming on to tell your tale, man.
Yeah, I love the concept of your pod, right? Everybody's got a story, and lots of people are interested in other people's journeys. And, I get people all the time reaching out, just asking for advice as to how to get into the sports business, whether they're students or just early entrants into the business. And I try to always give them some time, and now I can just refer them to the podcast.
We'll cover it off right now. This will be the master class on how to get into sports, into sports law and agent work, which is actually something I've been very fascinated in myself. I got Lee Steinberg's book. I've got I dabbled a little bit with Paul McCallum and Solomon Elamimian a couple of years ago. I had a great little run with them, having some fun, trying to pretend I was in that space a little bit and do some appearances for them. I love the space, but I also just love events, and I love people involved in putting the nuts and bolts together and the event side of things. So you've got a really great journey. We'll talk about a lot of different things on this pod. Obviously, assistant general manager of Vancouver Canucks, but super respected lawyer in town, and as well as with the Canucks and handling a lot of stuff. I'm fascinated with the cap side of things and some of these things that you had to do with them, and where your business has gone since you've left them. So let's dive into it a little bit. Chris, why don't you tell people what do you do, man?
What do I do? Well, I'm a lawyer by training, but I try to have that as just one of the tools in the toolkit. I see myself as an executive in the sports entertainment industry. Really, the business that I founded and that I now have two awesome partners in, Chris Beardsmore and James Douglas. We see ourselves as a comprehensive sports partnership agency. So we put together deals for teams or events or leagues with corporate partners, whether it be sponsorship deals, merchandise licensing deals, food and beverage deals, arena lease deals, those kinds of things. We also do endorsements for individual athletes, similar to what you were talking about with McCallum and Elamimian. We work with athletes to try to build their brands and partnerships with different sponsorship groups. And then the unique element that we have is both Chris Beardsmore and I are lawyers. And so, when we put together these deals, we can also offer our clients the legal services, which sometimes people have to go and get an agency to do the first part of that, and then go and get legal counsel for the second part, usually at pretty high rates, whereas we can wrap it all into one-stop shop and give you kind of a value add proposition that way. So that's where that's what we do, I guess, in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a fascinating space to me because, as mentioned, I had some fun a couple of years ago with Paul McCallum. Just that he had recently retired and gone into making some appearances and was building up a brand. And Solomon was MVP of the league and was looking to branch out and do some stuff. And I just happened to be, because I was working with Paul, hey, let's try working with Solly. And it was a really fun kind of experience for me, but also that space of like where I wasn't allowed to be an agent because I didn't have like a legal background, nor would I even pretend to know what a 100-page player contract look like. But it seems to be a process. Confirm for me though, you can't be an agent without a lawyer background. Is this sort of the idea, or can you give me a little bit of clarity on that?
Well, it depends on, you just need to be certified by the league. So there are lots of agents, and I'm speaking mostly about the NHL just because that's
Yeah.
where most of my experience lies. But a lot of the agents are not lawyers. They're former players, or they're people that are, just interested in the game and interested in the business of the game. And as long as you get certified and, learn the CBA and learn the nuances of a player deal, you can get certified by the NHLPA to be an agent. So there are a lot of lawyers, but they're not all lawyers. And so it really is just a matter of, can you learn the business of hockey and the business of the agency world. So I think most leagues are like that, whether it's the NFL, the CFL,
Yeah.
NBA. So yeah, you don't have to be a lawyer. It certainly helps that you can, draft the agreements, understand the language of the CBA. And so some agencies also will have non-lawyers and lawyers working together, and they would bounce things off each other. But so certainly not a prerequisite, but definitely helps to have that background.
So you, as an executive that worked in the NHL and worked for the Canucks, and having to deal with agents and lawyers and balancing the two of them, and I guess I'll dive into a little bit about that role of the assistant general manager. But which did you prefer then? Did you prefer the lawyer who could just kind of handle it, and you guys already knew what the number was going to be, or or did you prefer like your buddy that you golf with that just happens to represent the athlete, and you guys can get it done on a golf course, and then someone just tidies it up? What's the better process for you?
Well, the funny thing about working in the NHL landscape is there's a standard player contract that has been agreed between the league and the Players Association. And so there's not a lot of negotiation of terms and conditions that happens. Really, what you're negotiating is the term of the deal,
Yeah.
the amount of the deal, and then sometimes if it's an entry level player, there can be some rookie bonuses, or if it's a player in the later stages, what's called a 35 plus contract, you can do some bonuses there. But there's not, I contrast that to, say, doing the Rogers Arena deal, where you have a 80-page document with Rogers where every element is negotiated and written from scratch and hard bargained. Whereas, with NHL deals, you've got the template, you've got everything in place, and you're really just hammering out those obviously key details of
Sure.
salary and term. So whether it's a lawyer representing the player, or whether it's a former player, there's different nuances. You just have to learn how to navigate what their interests are and what their, I guess, bargaining position might look like based on other comparable players.
Sure.
And you just try to develop a rapport. And I guess, having been a former athlete myself, and having also been and still a lawyer, I felt like I could relate to whoever was on the other side of the table and find that common ground. And you do have to have that rapport and that banter with them, just to set the stage before you get into the dirty talk of the money. So, but yeah, I felt like I was able to do that and find some common ground with everyone.
That's got to be as far as Blackfin goes, and leaving the fact that you're a lawyer is probably super amazing and helpful because at minimum, you've got that backup. You can probably roll in and do law for any corporation. But the fact that you're able to take that experience, move in, start a brand new company, that's got to be a little bit daunting as far as what are we? Who are we? What are we trying to do here? Or were you able to kind of pull your contacts maybe with you, or some kind of scenario that allowed you to get set up a little bit easier than, say, if it was just some random person on the street that decided they wanted to start a sports company?
Yeah, well, it's funny, when I was working with the Canucks, and things overlap. Once I made the transition from the legal side to the hockey operations side, I knew that my circumstances were going to be in a lot more jeopardy, and it's very much a win or you're out mentality on the operations side, whereas on the legal side, it's do your job well and you're fine. And so I knew that I was moving to the operations side, I was putting myself in harm's way, and I would do it 10 times out of 10 because the experience and the excitement of that role was worth it. But I always said to my wife, look, if things go astray, I can fall back on the legal background. I can go to a firm downtown and restart my legal practice like I did, 20 years ago when I was with Blake's. So that was always a fallback that I knew I had. And the reason I didn't gravitate to that after I left the Canucks was I wanted to stay in the sports entertainment space and do something, on my own or with colleagues that I like and respect. And so the idea kind of just gravitated to, hey, why don't we start an agency that works in the space and can service teams and events and clients, and maybe bring new events to town, or maybe start some new initiatives on our own. And certainly the contact base that we all developed while working with the Canucks. Because if I didn't mention, my two colleagues were also colleagues with me at the Canucks for a long, long time. And so, we have that base of contacts in hockey, but also in other sports around town, with the Olympic movement, just from Chris and I both having worked there for a long time. And so it seemed like a natural fit that we would use that network of contacts and try to create something in the industry that we loved. And so that's
especially Vancouver, which has been it's exploding here. Well, it was exploding out of the Olympics. I mean, it's settled a little bit after everything and the Canucks thing settled down a little bit. And now that the hype has kind of come back, we got the Grey Cup in town. It like any town, I guess it goes ebbs and flows and waves. But I still feel like the town is in infancy when it comes to, even though the Olympics put it on the map, there's still, I want to say something missing, but it just feels like there's still something coming to this town. That is not, I don't necessarily mean the Stanley Cup per se, but I'm just talking about, Vegas went crazy with the Super Bowl and the F1 and everything that came in all out of the pandemic, and it just completely exploded. Vancouver feels like how it did in when I moved here in 2005. It kind of feels like that 2007 time period, 2008. It's like something's coming. We don't know exactly what it is, but there's infrastructure, there's new things on the way. I just feel like we're right on the edge of something happening again, and that's a good time for you to have a sports company,
Totally. And I tend to agree with you. I mean, there was that period where Vancouver lost the Grizzlies and Vancouver lost the F1 race, and it felt, and it was starting to get branded as no fun city. And things did seem a little bit bleak. And then, the Olympics happened, and there've been lots of World Cup events and things that have happened since then. And you're right. Now with Grey Cup and Invictus Games and FIFA 2026, it seems like that momentum is really building. And there's lots of other stuff going on behind the scenes too, with the city and the province. And I think the new mayor in Vancouver is really pushing for events and for, businesses to really get involved with municipal affairs. So I think it's a really good time to be in Vancouver. And, for me, I've lived here almost 25 years, grew up in Quebec and gravitated out here as soon as I finished school, because I just wanted to be in this city and in this environment where you can, golf and ski in the same day.
Be warm.
Yeah, be warm. Exactly. So, it was a place where when I left the Canucks, I did have some discussions with some teams around the league, but I just wanted to stay here. And my wife's got a good job here. My kids were in high school here. It wasn't the right time for me to say, I'm going to go and look around North America to stay in hockey. And so looking at the Vancouver market and all of the characteristics that you're talking about, and just that momentum with sports, it felt like the perfect time to start this business.
Yeah, it's really good timing, man. And I think you got the right personnel there. The right personnel. You got Trevor Linden, I saw in there too, which is Vancouver royalty. So a good way to kick it off. Okay, so we covered a bit about what's going on with Blackfin, but how did you get there? So what did you do? And how did you do it? How did you get it to the spot of here? How did you go from Quebec, becoming the lawyer, and sort of that process that took you to the Canucks and now to here?
Yeah, it sometimes seems crazy to think, I came from a little town called Lennoxville in the eastern townships of Quebec, which is a long way from Vancouver. But I had this ambition. I was always an athlete growing up. I played every sport imaginable. Football was the sport I played at the highest level, where I played at Queens. Um, and as I gravitated, actually, one of the reasons I went to law school was to keep playing football, because I'd finished my business degree and I didn't really want to hit the workforce, and football was going well. And so I said, well, I'm going to stick around and do another degree. And so I chose law as the degree. And part of that was seeing people in the sports world in executive level positions that had legal backgrounds. And so I thought, if it worked for them, maybe it'll work for me. So I did the law degree, kept playing football, and then when the degree was over, it was time to, okay, now I need to put this into practice. I got a job at Blake Castles in the Toronto office. Actually, did 2 summers with them, and then said, you know what, Vancouver's the place I want to be at. I'd visited a couple of times and said, that's just the lifestyle and the environment and the warmth, as you said, that I wanted. And I didn't mind the rain too much. So I said, I can handle that. And so I asked Blake's to transfer my articles to the Vancouver office, which they kindly agreed to do. And that was the start of my journey in Vancouver. So I worked at Blake's for about 5.5 years, doing corporate commercial agreements, financings, acquisitions, a little bit of labor and employment law, a little bit of everything. And then my first break into the sports industry was I was calling around and just trying to find an opportunity. And funny enough, the general counsel for the Canucks at the time, a gentleman named James Conrad, I met with him, and he explained how the Canucks were doing pro bono work for the Air Canada Championship PGA Tour stuff.
Yeah.
And so he said, hey, I've done this for a few years. I'd love to ditch it if you want to take it over from me. And I said, sure. And what that entailed was, driving out to Northview Golf Course in Surrey every Tuesday morning at about 7 a.m. To attend a steering committee meeting. And really, it was just absorbing the knowledge that all of these other professionals had, right? You had broadcast people, you had sponsorship people, you had merchandise people, you had event operations and logistics people, and they would talk in the meeting, and I would just soak it all up. And then at some point, I was maybe asked to draft an agreement for something, and so I would do that. But really, it was just learning about the sports business from being immersed in that environment. And then, a few years later, the Vancouver 2010 bid was being organized, and it turned out that James Conrad was being leaned on to do their sponsorship template and to plan just how they would go about getting sponsors for the Olympic bid, given his experience with the Canucks. And so I just said to him, hey, if there's an opportunity to work on the bid, I'd love to do that. And so he said, well, there's we're putting a pitch to all the major law firms to be a community contributor to the bid. And so why don't you go and talk to them, and if they'll put your name forward, then great, we'll work with you. So I went and talked to our managing partner at Blake's and expressed to him how much I hoped that Blake's would participate and that I could be their representative. And I remember being told at the time, this is awesome. We really love your initiative. And I thought they were going to say, you can help as one of the senior partners moves forward with this.
Right.
But to their credit, and hopefully to mine, they said, you're our guy, you run with this, and just don't mess it up, and come get senior help when you need it. So that was really,
that's an exciting moment, because you're like, okay, well, hold on. Great. So I've got this. But again, the lawyer world for me is fascinating and also scary and odd. But is that like amazing? And then you shit your pants? Like, are you like, okay, wait a minute, so this is mine now for real? So careful what you wish for kind of moment in your career, or you just got it in you and you just go for it and fight to make it the best thing?
Yeah, probably a little of both. It was definitely exciting. It was the big break that I felt I'd been waiting for.
Yeah.
And and Blake's is a great firm, and it was great for my career development, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to keep doing and to become a partner there. And, because I find when you're a lawyer at a firm, you're the instrument of somebody else's success. And I wanted to be more the instrument of my own success or my team's success or my event success. So when the bid opportunity came in, I jumped at it. And sure, you're a little scared that maybe you don't know everything there is to know to help these guys. But I knew that I had the support and backing of the firm. So it was easier to do. And so that lasted for, call it a year and a half. And then in February of 2005, or I guess it was even before that, the IOC selected Vancouver as the host city. And they went about putting together an executive team. And when they hired a chief legal officer, he called me and said, I'd like to meet with you about what you've been doing during the bid. And we went and had lunch. And at the end of lunch, he said, well, if you'd like to come and join me on this journey, then I'd love to have you. So that was where I decided to leave the law firm and jump into the in-house world. And then spent the next 6 years almost at VANOC. As it went from the bid corporation to VANOC, the organizing committee. And over the next 6 years, I worked on some of the most significant sponsorship deals in Olympic history at the time. Crazy. I worked on the deals to build the Richmond Olympic Oval, the UBC Thunderbird Arena, the Vancouver Athletes Village. So it was just, all of these significant things that were happening in our city, and I got to be a part of them. So
Did you sleep at all? Was there sleep involved?
There was, it was a lot of work. The funny thing about it is, the end game is always 5-6 years away or there was always, so there were days when you said, okay, like I can stop and go home now because this is still a couple of years away, but the volume of work was intense. And we ended up having 11 lawyers in-house. So we were almost a mini law firm at VANOC, and the problem was the work would always outpace our addition of new lawyers. So we would be swamped and we were like, we need a new lawyer. And finally we'd get one hired. And then there was more and more work to be done. So we just could never keep pace. But
what's the core, like the real basic, like lawyerish stuff that has to happen for the Olympics in a city? Yeah. Can you give me the Coles Notes dumbed down version for like anyone that's listening or watching that's not a lawyer, that where you're tasked with like these 10 important things that have to happen? I can't imagine the legalese around a city hosting it, what you're obligated to do as a host city. I can only speak on experience of being here, and I worked at the live site down in Yaletown, but and we had a legal issue down there with the barricade. But I'm just saying, like, I when I came here in 2005 and the buzz leading into the Olympics and just being in an Olympic city at that time, and obviously the gold medal and everything that came with it, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And I don't imagine that would be experienced by a small town winning the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup or something. But it was truly remarkable to be a part of. But legally, I can't even wrap my head around what would be involved.
Yeah, it was, that whole experience was transformative for the city. I think just, how everybody was so immersed in what was going on and was so happy, right? The vibes were amazing. I remember walking down Granville Street or Georgia, and there were just throngs of people, and everyone was happy and high-fiving each other. And it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. On the legal side, I would say 80 to 90% of it is commercial agreements of some form or another. So it's agreements with the sponsors that are helping to fund the games. It's agreements with the construction companies that are building the venues. It's agreements with the hotels to make sure that they had enough accommodation for all of the visitors and the IOC delegates and all of the world delegates that were coming. It was agreements with bus providers. We had an agreement with a transportation management company that came in and said, okay, we're now running transportation. They had to source buses from as far away as Texas, California, Oregon, because there just wasn't enough. There weren't enough buses in the municipal system to accommodate all the different needs, right? The VIP shuttles, the athlete shuttles. And so, we just had this massive number of agreements. And then you have all of the service contracts with companies that are providing services for the games. You have all the labor and employment that goes along with having a staff of 2,000 people and 25,000 volunteers. And, so outside of commercial agreements, you have brand protection and trademark enforcement. And obviously the Olympic rings and the Vanox symbol were some of the most, widely used or widely desirable logos that people wanted to affix their brand to or attach and connect themselves to. And so we had to find ways to protect that brand. We had special legislation that was enacted simply to protect the Olympic trademarks in Canada.
Crazy.
And then, then there were various lawsuits. And so you deal with those, or you farm those out to outside counsel, and you still have to be the liaison that shepherds those. So yeah, I mean, it's the volume of agreements was intense, and then there's all the other things that go along with it. And then, toward the end, we had the accident with the luger. And so there was an inquest. And so there was legal work involved with that. There was if people remember, the female ski jumping lawsuit. So the women ski jumpers wanted to participate in the games. Right. And so there was a lawsuit alleging discrimination on the part of the IOC. And so, there was just always something. You went into the office with a plan of, I'm going to do A, B, and C today. And often it was D, E, and F, because it just took you on a tangent.
And not enough lawyers.
Never enough lawyers.
Does that take you? So you take it from there to, is that where the Canucks opportunity comes? Is that out of the Olympics?
Yeah. So, during the Olympics, the hockey venue was what was then GM Place. So the Canucks venue. And so we worked on agreements with them. And so Victor DeBonis, who was the COO at the time, and Todd Kobus, the CFO, they contacted me literally the day after the closing ceremonies. And I had been, as the games were ending, I was thinking, okay, what do I do now? Do I go to London and try to work on 2012 and become what we call a games gypsy? There's all these people that go from games to games to games.
Yeah. I know a few of them.
Yeah. Or do I try to move to Switzerland and work with the IOC, or do I go back to the practice of law? I didn't really know what to do. And then I got this phone call from the Canucks saying, hey, we're interested in speaking with you about a position. And so, I had to contain my excitement and sort of maintain some bargaining power by thinking I had all these other options. But no, that was just perfect timing. So they offered me the role of general counsel, and that started a 12-year career there.
That's and what a time to be a part of it. And obviously, I'd like to point out for anyone listening as well, is that this market, like any other Canadian hockey market, but it's volatile at best, especially when you get to game 7 and it doesn't go well. And then you've got to go through that process, and then you've got to decide what's happening. And it was, you were here and a part of some messy stuff over there. And I don't mean that like disrespecting anyone that was involved, but as the casual watcher and listener and sort of seeing what was going on, it really went through a lot of, it seemed like, just shake up the coaches and contracts and just trying to manage that thing. It seems to be on a little bit on track now, or at least all these players have matured into this thing. And so you also went through that. And so I want to make sure everyone listening is aware of what you've been through, because you took an Olympic bid, then the legalese of the Olympics, which had its own thing, including having to ship snow in.
Right.
Right. An Olympic gold medal, tons of profile in the city. Then you go to an organization that's basically, in a sense, not necessarily a part of a rebuild, but has come out of some darkness and about to be, into some light, Stanley Cups, and then turmoil. You're managing that, and then you have to go through that process of like leaving that and restarting. So I kudos on you, man. I got to think that no one in this city has more experience with
with ups and downs, right?
ups and downs, red
Yeah.
tape, bureaucracy than you. I just can't imagine. Like, I just can't imagine. So good on you.
Yeah. Well, let me take you back to the early start of the Olympics, and you reminded me when you talked about bringing in the snow. Right, we were
Yeah.
helicoptering snow from Manning Park onto Cypress Mountain. But so in addition to that, you had, um, there was a controversy around the torch relay where protesters tried to disrupt it. They smashed all the windows at the Hudson's Bay, which was the
Yeah.
Olympic store. We had obviously the death of the luger, which was tragic. We had the arm in the opening ceremonies. The arm of the cauldron didn't raise, and there were just so many things that at the outset weren't going well. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh man, I'll never work in this town again because it's just going to be an absolute gong show." We had buses that were breaking down on the way to Whistler. Nothing was going right. And then probably day 3 of the games, all of a sudden, Alex Bilodeau wins a gold medal in the moguls, and then the sun came out and everything started to go right. And from that point to the end of the games, it was just perfect. And then I started to think, okay, wow, now I've got something to really be proud of. And I translate that into the 2010-11 season, which was my first year with the Canucks, where, I mean, it couldn't have gone better. So you go from winning a gold medal at GM Place to then it becomes Rogers Arena, and the Canucks go on this run, and we get to Game 7 of the finals. And I'm thinking, this stuff is easy. I'm so blessed. I get to go to all these places where it's everything comes up roses. And then, so obviously we lose Game 7, the city riots, everything's just awful. And then we go into this period where, the Sedins and Kessler and along with that era needs to be turned over. And I think, sports is always cyclical, and sometimes you can get out of the down cycle faster, and perhaps we should have. And there's lots of reasons that I'd go into, not on this podcast, to try and explain why. But we went through this prolonged down cycle as the team turned over. And, ultimately you get young stars like Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko, and you make a trade for JT Miller, and you start to build what is now the core that's being successful. But, for a number of reasons, we just didn't get to the finish line. And you go through those ups, you go through those downs, and it all builds who you are as a person. It all builds who you are as an employee. At the end of the day, the organization made the decision that it was going to cut ties with every single one of us.
Yeah.
I was of the view that there were a few of us that were really productive and could have helped and stayed. But, organizations do that. Sometimes it's for optics. Sometimes it's to give the new management team a fresh start. Whatever it is, I'm totally fine with that, because it had been 12 years for me. There's always good in change. And so provided me with that opportunity to do something different. And that's Blackfin. And we're super excited about what we're doing at Blackfin. And hopefully Blackfin will have more of the ups than the downs.
And I think it's like anything else. So, and then you talked earlier about that movement and where were you going to go, and you decided to stay in the city. But I've been a proponent of, and I've touched on this on a few episodes now, where saying yes can lead to these different changes, and you get answers, whether good or bad. You at least get an answer when you say yes. And in your particular case, you had 2 very big yeses happen in a row, and then you're forced at that point, when you lose the gig, to, what am I going to do? And I'm sure, as you mentioned and you touched on, there's all these options. Do I want to move to another city? Do I want to take another NHL gig? Before we move on to where you want to see Blackfin go, your role kind of morphed into the assistant general manager. Can you touch a little bit on what is that job? Like, just what is that assistant general manager job?
Yeah.
And now that you've done it and you've formed Blackfin, you're able to take all these different things and put them into a nice little puzzle.
Yeah.
And what would you explain you are now? Like, what is the AGM and the former of this company? I mean, man, you've worn a lot of hats, but I am curious what that role is.
Yeah, I think it all wraps up into just an experienced advisor and deal maker and, trusted colleague and friend, really is what I come out of all that with. But you're right. I said yes to a lot of things. They said, will you take on the role of governor of the American Hockey League franchise? I said, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And then they said, we're thinking of purchasing a National Lacrosse League team. We need somebody to sort of head that up. And so, first I sort of explored and did the due diligence on what it would take to bring a team. Worked with the NLL to do that, and then we acquired the team that was playing in Langley. And for a while there, I was GM, head of marketing, head of logistics, because it was really just me and a couple of other people that were working on it. Eventually, we hired out a team, and but I stayed on as governor of the National Lacrosse League team. And so I had this strange role that nobody else in the NHL had, where I was assistant GM, chief legal officer of the business, and governor of two teams. And it's because I said yes, and I welcomed all of that. I wanted all of that on my shoulders, and it was exciting. It gave me a knowledge base and a network that is pretty incomparable now. And so I relish that. But you asked what an assistant general manager of an NHL team does, and I think it's different for every team based on the skill set of the person. And so most teams will have perhaps 2, even 3 assistant GMs, and they'll carve out what their role is based on their skill set. So for me, it was knowing and understanding the CBA, making sure the team always complied with the CBA, working on negotiating the entry-level contracts and the restricted free agent contracts, papering the deals, doing, I worked on the logistics side with our Air Canada travel arrangements, our hotel arrangements, like just stuff that's behind the scenes that nobody thinks about. But, the team is a massive business wherever it goes. And so I controlled the budget and just kind of the logistics, and had team services manager and team administration that reported to me. The other assistant GM was more on the scouting side, so sort of looked after the pro scouts, the amateur scouts, the medical crew, the equipment managers, that side of the personnel equation. But yeah, in terms of cap and compliance and contracts for the younger players, that was all in my domain. And then combine that with helping the organization with all and sundry legal matters, and then helping to run the Comets and the Warriors. So I had a full plate for sure.
Absolutely. You always have a full plate. There's a full plate every single time. But I mean, hey, we all have hamsters that run it on full tilt all the time. So, you gotta have a full plate. I mean, especially with your talents. I mean, I'm sure they're just loading up, and you just keep saying yes, and we just go until we can't go anymore, I guess. Keep going. You ever just want to be a barista?
Well, I spend enough time at Starbucks that I probably should, but no, you know what? I love being in the center of things. I just love helping and knowing the information and trying to be part of the strategy. And so even though I've always been busy, I've never not wanted that. And I've always found a way to prioritize family too. So, and the good thing about the jobs I've had is if I wanted to leave at 3:00 and go watch my kid play soccer or whatever, I would just do that, right? Because I know, hey, I can work at 10, 11 at night and finish that off. So I just made sure that my life could accommodate family, and then just worked around it. So I wouldn't consider myself a workaholic necessarily, but I try to be efficient and productive and just always available, so that whenever something happens, I'm ready to do it.
More like a dreamaholic. Just keep moving. Keep moving ahead. Which brings us to where you want to see Blackfin go. You've put together an amazing team. It's still in infancy for the most part, but it's gathering steam. So, Chris, what will you do next? What's your plan here, man?
Yeah. So, I mentioned to you off screen that we're kind of in that stage where we're receptive to everything, and we've got 100 big ideas, and eventually we'll narrow that focus and probably, come up with lanes that are a little tighter. But, right now we're talking with pro teams, we're talking with amateur teams, we're talking with events, a music festival. We've got lots of different lanes. We're working for a Finnish rink board company that does a 360 LED rink board. So we've just got all these different projects, and it's kind of exciting. I think ultimately we just want to keep growing. My partner James Douglas comes from the partnership marketing and revenue generation uh, part of the business, and so that's his focus is finding us clients where we can go out and help them with partnerships. Chris Beardsmore, like me, is a lawyer, but tons of experience with partnership marketing, putting those agreements together, slicing and dicing product categories, and just finding ways to help businesses and properties, be it teams, leagues, players, find that value proposition together and come together. And we either offer the sales side or the strategy side or the legal side. So I think we just want to keep growing, keep working for bigger and better properties. Maybe bring an event or two to the city if we can, or just be a relevant and well respected agency in the city of Vancouver and beyond, where people know that if they need great advice, great experience, and people they can sit down and have a beer with too, that we're the go-to ones. So we've got my two partners are fantastic. I love working with them. We've worked together for years and years, and we have a great synergy and fit between the three of us. And then you mentioned Trevor Linden. He's one of our 8-person board of advisors, where we have Olympic gold medalist Christine Nesbitt. We've got other people that we worked with at the Canucks and at Vanoc. That it creates a balance for us. People that have expertise in areas where maybe we fall short a little bit. We've got people in hospitality, people in merchandising. So we kind of round out our team expertise, and they're just great people that if we call them, they're available to help. They're not involved in our day to day, but they've expressed this fantastic desire to see us succeed, and they want to help. And so they've been great. Every time we've picked up the phone to one of them, they answer the bell, and they're willing to attend meetings or provide us with assistance or contacts. It's been great. And so, where do we see Blackfin in 5 years? It's hopefully positioned as one of the leading, sport and entertainment consulting / sales / legal firms in the Northwest is where I see it. And hopefully we can start, hiring additional people and providing employment opportunities for people. And we'll start to do some things to give back to the community, because we really want to do that. We want to support. One of the things we're thinking of is to honor our name Blackfin, which is all centered on the orca and the great animal of the West Coast. That's also happens to be the inspiration of our hockey team's logo, where we all met, worked together. We'd love to figure out a way to work with a charity that helps save the orca population, because they are dwindling in the Salish Seas. So all kinds of things like that. We, like you said, the hamster wheel is constantly going. We just want to work with great people and great companies, and we're finding ways to do that now. We just want to keep the momentum going.
Adopt an orca.
Yeah.
Start the Blackfin Adopt an Orca program. Where does launching Blackfin rank for you level of excitement? As from the Olympic side to this dream gig with the Canucks to this, I mean, everything has its own moment, but where does it rank for you?
Yeah, it's it had a bit of a slow start, just because I was consulting on my own and working with the Canadian Olympic Committee on a potential 2030 bid, trying to rekindle that excitement. And then it kind of morphed into, hey, these other guys might be willing to join me. And so that it didn't have this one aha moment, kind of like when you accept a job at the Olympics or you accept a job with the Canucks. There's this feeling of euphoria. It's been more of a gradual process, and there's a lot more when you start your own business, you've got GST and PST and WorkSafe and all like corporate income tax. And you're like, oh God, it's just, there's so many things to think about. And so the excitement has been tempered by that. But, I think 5 years from now, when I look back in hindsight, it may move into that number one position, because I think it's, as great as it was to work for Vancouver 2010, and as great as it was to work for the Canucks, and I feel blessed that I got both of those opportunities. But taking charge of your own destiny and creating something, and hopefully leaving a legacy and having a company that can endure and persist in the city, that's pretty exciting. And so I think over time that's gonna put those other ones into second and third place.
I think it's an amazing time to have this company. I think you've got an incredible support staff with you. Your experience is through the roof. So it's a good thing for the city. The city's about to explode again, as I mentioned. And I think that the fact that you stayed, the fact that you've decided to go for it in this city, and as you said, carve out this incredible company that offers an amazing service to the city, but also to people from around the world to enjoy this city better, create events better. I think it's admirable and amazing. And given the fact that you had so many options to leave this city and try to, do something else down the road, I think is great. And I think that's a story that people are going to resonate with in this city. And I think there's some great stuff ahead for you. So I really, really, really am pulling for you. I think it's great. Congrats on the launch of it. And congrats on everything that's happened and where it's going to go. So all the best to you. Thanks for making the time today on Do Did Will, the story of people. Do you want to direct people to the website and where they can find you online?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for giving me that opportunity. It's www.blackfinsportsgroup.com. And
awesome.
There's a form stack there. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so through the website. But also you can find me on Twitter under at Van Geerman. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just reach out. We'd love to.
Awesome.
Love to help.
Thanks for the time. All the best. Good luck with everything. Thanks for making the time today. It is Do Did Will, the story of people podcast for another week. That is Chris Geer, the busiest guy. And I know a lot of busy people, but I would say that your last 20 years have been probably one of the busiest I've seen from anybody. And we're all just working towards making coffee for a living down the road, pal. So keep up the rocking time, and we'll talk to you soon. That's Do Did Will for another week, friends. Thanks. We'll talk next week.